Vivian Nunes there. Right, let's get a bit more now on what this means. Marley Morris is the Associate Director for Migration, Trade and Brexit Relations at the think tank Institute for Public Policy Research. Thanks so much for coming on the programme.
Thank you. Good evening.
So I'm not going to ask you whether you've read every single word of the 1,200 pages yet. That's a little unfair. But first impressions, what do you take from it?
First impressions are that this is clearly better than no deal. There are significant gains for the UK compared to a no deal scenario. We've got, for instance, maintaining zero tariffs and quotas on trading goods. But on the other hand, it is a very thin deal compared to what we're used to as members of the Single Market and Customs Union. There are going to be lots of new non-tariff barriers that will emerge in a week's time, lots of new customs checks, all sorts of regulatory checks, and all sorts of challenges for people wanting to trade into the EU, either by selling goods or by selling services.
And yeah, the framing of this is important, isn't it? Because we've got to go back to the vote itself. This was a democratic exercise, and at the time of the vote, the thought of not even having a trade deal with you wasn't certainly campaigned on, wasn't really on the card. So it's difficult and perhaps unfair to compare it to no deal, compare it to what we have now. Those barriers that you just mentioned, how big, how significant do you think they will be?
I think they will be significant, and it's likely that it will lead to some immediate disruption at the borders, I suspect, in the short run, just because there's going to be lots of new changes. Businesses aren't used to those changes yet. There have been some flexibility on the EU side to manage those changes, but lots of it actually is going to kind of take place quite suddenly on the 1st of January. But then over time, I think business will adapt. The problem is it's likely to adapt by there being less trade than there otherwise would have been. So we'll end up having a relationship with the EU which involves less trade. And the risk is that that means lower growth and a longer recovery from the current economic crisis. OK, what about the other side of this? What opportunities can you sense from it? Well, it's clear that the UK has focused on wanting to maximise its ability to make its own laws, to do things its own way. And so it has a lot more freedom to develop things in its own way in future. So take an area such as state aid. There is a lot more flexibility now for the UK to develop its own state aid policy. One area of that is regional policy, so developing how you give funds to different regions. And that could help with the government's levelling up agenda, for instance, helping to rebalance the economy regionally by helping to provide funds to poor areas of the country. OK, great stuff. We'll let you get back to your reading. Thank you so much for coming on. That's Marley Morris.